I won't speak as long because I just want to focus on Loretta Lynch and not on all the problems that some may see in this country. It is a pleasure to welcome her to this committee. She's smart, she's tough, she's hardworking, independent. She's a prosecutor's prosecutor, and her qualifications are beyond reproach. It's been unanimously confirmed by the Senate twice before to serve as the top federal prosecutor based in Brooklyn, New York. And I hope we have another swift confirmation for Ms. Lynch. As U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, she's brought terrorists and cyber criminals to justice. She's obtained convictions against corrupt public officials from both political parties. She's fought tirelessly against violent crime and financial fraud. She's remained determined to protect the rights of victims. Ms. Lynch has worked hard to improve the relationships between law enforcement and the communities they serve. And probably that's one of the reasons why her nomination enjoys strong support from both. She has prosecuted those who have committed crimes against police officers, as well as police officers who have committed crimes. Her record shows that as Attorney General, Ms. Lynch will effectively, fairly, and independently enforce the law. I hope we all remember that she is the nomination for Attorney General, and that's why I'm focusing on her. She's born in North Carolina, the daughter of a Baptist preacher and a school librarian. And we're honored to have members of her family here with us today, and I know you'll be introducing them later. She grew up hearing her family speak about living in the Jim Crow South, but she never lost faith that the way to obtain justice is through our legal system. And her nomination is historic. When she's confirmed as the 83rd Attorney General of the United States, she'll be the first African-American woman to lead the Department of Justice. Really, I can't think of anyone more deserving of that honor. She's going to lead a Justice Department that faces complex challenges. Nearly 1/3 of its budget goes to the Bureau of Prisons, and that drains vital resources from nearly all other public safety priorities. Think of that, 1/3 the budget goes to prisons. And a significant factor leading to this budget imbalance is the unnecessary creation of more and more mandatory minimum sentences. Passing new mandatory minimum laws become a convenient way for lawmakers to claim they're tough on crime, even when there's no evidence these sentences keep us safer. And it's one of the reasons why we have the largest prison population in the world. That's why I oppose mandatory minimums. I hope we can find a way to face this mass incarceration problem. And the Justice Department needs strong leadership to keep up with the rapid development of technology. We must stay ahead of the curve to prevent and fight threats to cybersecurity and data privacy. I think it would have been like the last few days in the Northeast if a cyber terrorist could have closed down all our electrical grids. The growing threat of cybercrime is very real, but also the specter of unchecked government intrusion into our private lives, particularly dragnet surveillance programs directed at American citizens. The intelligence community faces a critical deadline this June. 3 sections of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act are set to expire. I believe we have to protect our national security, but we also have to protect our civil liberties, which make us unique as a country. So we have to reform our nation's surveillance laws so we can realize both goals. The next Attorney General is going to play an essential role in protecting all Americans, all Americans. The President's selection for Attorney General, no matter who the President is, deserves to be considered swiftly, fairly, and on the nominee's own record. I believe Americans realize that a role this important cannot be used as just one more soundbite Washington political football. I'm confident that if we stay focused on Ms. Lynch's impeccable qualifications and fierce independence, she's going to be confirmed quickly by the Senate. She deserves a fair, thoughtful, and respectful confirmation process. And the American people deserve an Attorney General like Ms. Lynch. So I thank you for your years of public service. I look forward to your testimony. I've been fortunate that my native state of Vermont has allowed me to serve here for 4 decades. I've listened in several different committees I've been on to a lot of statements by nominees. I cannot think of one that is so moving as your statement. And I intend to make sure I have send copies to all members of my family and other friends.
You told me that last night.
You know, my years in law enforcement as state's attorney in Vermont gave me a lot of respect for the difficult and dangerous work we ask police officers to do every day. I know the toll it can take not only on the officer, but oftentimes on their families.
Yes.
I've tried to support the work of law enforcement, keep our communities safe. They have to have the resources they need, whether it's bulletproof vests or funding for innovative criminal justice efforts. I've also been deeply moved by the tragic events in Ferguson, New York. They have focused on what we know is a reality, oftentimes or sometimes strained relations between law enforcement and the communities they serve. I appreciate your reference to that in your statement. But you've worked very hard as a U.S. attorney to bring both law enforcement and the communities together. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes, thank you, Senator. I think you've raised one of the most important issues facing our country today, which is the need to resolve the tensions that appear to be discussed and appear to be rising between law enforcement and the communities that we serve. In my experience as a prosecutor and United States attorney, these tensions are best dealt with by having discussions between all parties so that everyone feels that their voice has been heard. With respect to our brave law enforcement officers, we ask so much of them. We ask them to keep us safe. We ask them to protect us literally from ourselves. And we ask them to do it often without the resources that they need to be safe and secure themselves. Yet they still stand up every day and risk their lives for us. Many of our community residents, because of a host of factors, feel disconnected from government in general today, and when they interact with law enforcement, transfer that feeling to them as well, even if someone is there to help. What I have found most effective is getting people together and simply listening to their concerns, being open, helping them see that, in fact, we are all in this together, and that the concerns of law enforcement, a safe society, a free society, are the exact same concerns of every resident of every community there.
And would you agree that that's something that has to be considered by not only federal law enforcement, but by state and local law enforcement, and that the federal government can help the state and local law enforcement in that respect?
Absolutely, Senator. One of the most important roles that the Department of Justice plays is not necessarily its most visible role, but it is the support that we provide to state and local law enforcement partners through our grant program and through our training program. We try our best to provide them with the resources that they need to carry out their jobs safely and effectively.
You know, we all know that no prosecutor's office has the resources to prosecute every single crime before it, and you have to decide which ones have priority. Let me talk about one. In state court, there was a case where a child rapist received 2 years. You obviously disagreed with that. You brought federal charges, and I think of Bill O'Reilly on Fox called you a hero and said, quote, "You should be respected by all Americans for standing up to gross injustice." And I agree with Bill O'Reilly on that. How do you make, well, let me back up. More and more of the Justice Department's budget, as I said earlier, is going now into our federal prison system. So you have limited resources. How do you make these kind of judgments? How do you determine which cases are the important ones you have to go, and also the very difficult thing, realizing if you go after certain cases, it means you don't have the resources to go after others?
Certainly, Senator. One of the privileges of being the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York has been the ability to work with so many of my United States Attorney colleagues across the country. All of us engage in this process every day, and we start with a full and frank evaluation with our law enforcement partners of the crime issues facing our particular districts. We try and determine what are the greatest threats to the people that we have sworn to serve. And that is what I do in the Eastern District of New York every day. We then look at our resources and set priorities and goals to achieve the safest communities that we can. But Senator, we do have to always maintain the flexibility to look at specific cases, such as the Goodman case, and determine if a federal interest exists and if, in fact, a victim has not been protected and has not been heard, and use federal resources there as well.
Well, let me go into one that takes resources, but we've had some people say, gosh, if you got terrorists, lock them up in Guantanamo, even though we know what that has cost the American people, both in respect abroad and in dollars. You've successfully prosecuted a number of terrorism cases in the Eastern District of New York, cases against individuals, as you said, plotting against John F. Kennedy Airport, Federal Reserve Bank, and so on. Just this month, you charged 2 al-Qaeda members for attacking American troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. I've been impressed not only in your district, but in other parts of the country where we've actually brought these terrorists to trial in our federal courts. We've shown the rest of the world we can do it. There's been convictions, Osama bin Laden's son-in-law being one, and then they've been locked up. Now, do you find the criminal justice system, and I think I know your answer, as an important counterterrorism tool?
Senator, it is certainly an important counterterrorism tool in the arsenal of tools that we have to deal with this ever-growing and ever-evolving threat. Let me say that at the outset, my view is that if terrorists threaten American citizens here or abroad, they will face American justice. We work with our counterparts throughout the executive branch to determine, based on every case, the most appropriate venue for bringing terrorists to justice, as our primary goal is to incapacitate them and prevent further destruction. Certainly within my own career as U.S. Attorney, when the decision has been made that the case should be handled by a U.S. Attorney's office, we proceed in that fashion. We also work closely, however, with the Office of Military Commissions and consult with them and share information to make those decisions as to what is, in fact, the best way to manage every case.
And then as these cases come to you, I'm going to ask you a question I've asked each of the most recent Attorney General nominees. And I say this because I think of the tremendous effort of the senator from California, Senator Feinstein, who's sitting here, her tremendous efforts to confront acts of torture carried out in our country's name. Do you agree that waterboarding is torture and that it's illegal?
Waterboarding is torture, Senator.
And thus illegal.
And thus illegal.
Thank you. And I know you're going to be asked a lot about immigration. Well, it makes me think we should be focusing on your qualifications for this job. Might even asking those questions might speak also to some of the qualifications of Congress. We worked for months in this committee, night and day, hundreds of hours, hearings, markups, debate, and we passed by a strong bipartisan majority an immigration bill that referenced so many of these things that we now hear discussed. My opinion, there were votes enough to pass it in the House of Representatives, but their leadership decided not to bring it up. I think that was a mistake. So now we deal with the question of executive action. You didn't write the executive action. You weren't consulted about it, were you?
No, I was not aware of it until it was rendered.
And would you say if you got millions of people in this country who may not be in a valid or legal status, it would perhaps strain our resources to think about how we would deport 10 to 12 million people. Would that be a fair statement?
I believe that statement is fair, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.